Hi, my name's Angela Casey and welcome to Edinburgh Outdoors, the podcast that explores Edinburgh's green spaces and the people in them. And I'm in a very sunny Blackford Glen today, standing beside some rocks, which we'll talk about in a minute. And the sun is out, we've got spring birds, and I'm here with Angus Miller of GeoWalks again. Welcome back to Edinburgh Outdoors, Angus.
Absolute pleasure to be here, especially when it's such a nice day. It's the hope of spring.
It's lovely, isn't it? And we've got our second dog interviewee today as well, Roxy, who's here with Angus.
I don't think she'll say very much, but hopefully she'll keep fairly quiet.
I don't think she's very interested in the rocks, is she? I think she's looking at her ball. So when we met before, we walked in Holyrood Park and we talked about James Hutton on volcanoes, and it was really interesting. So what have you been up to since we last met up? I think you've been somewhere quite glamorous.
I went off to the Caribbean for a few weeks to visit some volcanoes. And then, as is often the case, when you go away for a while, you come back and everything's piled up. So it's been a busy few weeks, but really nice. I've been out 15 days in the last 3 weeks doing geology around about Fife and the Lothians and enjoying some really nice weather.
Yeah,
it's been great. What about yourself? What have you been up to?
I've done some interesting things. I've been on a trip on the canal. I think since I last saw you, I've been doing other bits and pieces in town, doing a bit about Loch End Park.
I know well. In fact, Roxy and I walked through Loch End Park this morning.
So I went with Hetty, and she was telling me that Loch End Park Loch and Duddingston Loch are both some of the last remaining ancient lochs.
Yes, absolutely.
By glaciation.
Absolutely, it's a lovely little setting because it's the ice just hit a crag and just had this little scoop out, so it's really natural.
And she told me there used to be a much bigger loch, as did Duddingston Loch, and they've been reduced over time. But in researching for today, I discovered that Blackford Pond is also, is it not?
Yes, it's in the same setting next to a hill and with a big scoop out. I think Blackford Pond's probably been a lot more modified though, because it's been built around and drained and dredged. I mean, so it's
so there's not much left of the original.
But Loch End is lovely. It's a lovely little park and quite a natural feel to it, which is great. You know, so many little corners of Edinburgh, aren't there?
So we've both been busy, that's good. And have you done many geology walks around Edinburgh recently?
So I was down the Watervliet. I did 3 days in succession, which is really nice actually, because it's quite a long walk. If you do it in one day, you tend to just kind of go on down. But we stopped and we looked at the shape of the landscape and found some rocks, and it was lovely. It's a new thing.
You did the whole length of
we started at Balerno, but we did it in like three mornings, so it was only 2 or 3 hours walk each day, which is very manageable, but also felt that we'd done a journey.
Yeah, it's a nice walk. So we're beside a huge rock today, which I've walked past many times. I do know what it's called, but I need you to explain it because I've looked at it many times and thought I really don't understand what they're telling me here.
Well, Agassiz Rock, after Louis Agassiz, who visited here in 1840. And I think it's really a human story rather than a geology story. But it's fascinating. It's a site of special scientific interest. Just this rock face is a very, very small boundary, but it's a site of special scientific interest. This is a geological triple SI, and it's because of the scratches on the rock and this amazing story about Louis Agassiz, and there's a couple of different aspects which we need to cover, but the first is him coming here in 1840, and he'd been up in the Highlands and he was coming with a perspective of seeing the Alps, seeing ice and seeing the effects of ice, and he comes to this place where there is no ice and he says, you used to have ice, this is a glaciated landscape, and he is completely right on that. Travels all over the Highlands, only in a few days, but he really gets it. Amazing eye for detail. So he writes a letter to Charles Maclaurin, who's the editor of The Scotsman, and that letter is published in The Scotsman as headline news. Scotland has been covered in ice. But on his way home, he comes to Edinburgh, and it's really important because Edinburgh is a kind of hotbed of geologists then and now, and so it's really important that he persuaded the great and the good of the Edinburgh geological scene about this story of this being an ice-carved landscape. So Sunday afternoon, October 1840, and he's taken for a tour around Edinburgh. They take him to Arthur's Seat, he's not impressed. Castle Rock, not impressed. Corstorphine Hill, where they missed the best evidence of an ice-scraped landscape in Edinburgh, not impressed. He comes here and he sees these scratches in this rock face and he says, here we go, this is evidence, this is the work of ice. And in my opinion, he he was wrong.
Oh,
It's debated, but we should look at the scratches, see we're here. They're pretty obscure, and they're right underneath this overhang.
right.
So actually, they're probably not. I think they're slicken sides, which is a very common feature to see in rocks like this. But it's this stuff here. You can run your hands across. You can feel it nicely smooth in this direction, which is the right direction the ice should be moving in. But actually, the whole rock is altered because it's an old lava flow with a fault plane running through it.
Right.
But you can sort of see what they thought. You know, see that whole kind
There's
of
a sort
smooth
of striation, isn't there, going along?
Yeah, you definitely see some scratches. And it doesn't matter, actually, because he was right in the big scheme of things, and he persuaded people. It still got debated for decades afterwards, but people eventually accepted this amazing idea that ice had been in this landscape, which has now got no ice.
No. So there are other indications that there was ice here, as well as this.
Well, and also I would look up on top, and round the front for scratches rather than heading away down around the corner here.
These are cracks here, these aren't they?
Yes, it's an interesting bit of rock. There's another side to the Agassiz story that we should mention briefly, which is really based on this work, based on his understanding and new theory of ice. We got a new job. Oh. So this wasn't just about Scotland, this was about Northern Europe, it's about North America. There's a lot of glaciated landscapes around, so he got appointed to Harvard University, and he went there and he established this pseudo-scientific study of race. And it's really quite remarkable because he was very influential, really, based on this reputation he built up. He took pictures of black slaves, the first pictures of black slaves, and was trying to show that their body type was inferior. So, out and out scientific racism, which he was lauded all through his life and is celebrated. The glaciers are named after him, and he's got statues all over the place. And it's only just recently people have started readdressing that, and actually the descendants of the slaves who he took pictures of have now campaigned for Harvard University to give the pictures to them and not have them in their archive, and that's been supported by Agassiz's descendants. It's interesting when you think of when people do some work and then get a reputation and then use that reputation actually for what we now consider to be very abhorrent views. Yeah,
extraordinary. But he still gets a rock named after him, and he still gets a site of scientific special interest in the middle of Edinburgh in Blackford Glen. So what we're going to do now is we've looked at the rock, and we're going to walk further along Blackford Glen, and we're going to talk about Blackford Glen generally because it's an interesting example of geology.
As you start to walk up here, you do get this sense of a wider landscape. We've got the Braidburn coming through, but it's at this stage quite a small river, but it's sitting in this wider valley. And so there's a couple of different things going on, but the main thing here in the lower reaches of the Glen is it's just the ice has got in here. And there's a weak layer in the rock, and the ice is scoured into that with a almost classic U-shaped glen, better known for the highlands meandering through. And then it just rises up with harder rock on either side.
So we've come in from the Blackford Glen end, which is the eastern end of it, and it's quite a wide, gentle valley at that point. But as we get further westward towards Morningside, it does get incredibly deep, doesn't it? It's a gorge.
Yes, and I think that's a really interesting transformation from this section where it's quite wide and open, and then you suddenly find yourself in the Hermitage with these steep rocky crags and a much narrower valley.
We're walking the opposite way to the ice at the moment.
Yeah.
So why does it open out more at this end?
Well, we're really visiting it in the correct order in terms of time, because this valley has been carved out first. So when the ice was moving, it was going eastwards, carving into softer rock and just opening up. There was a valley here before, I'm sure, because we've got hard rock making the summit of Blackford Hill, high ridge there. We've got hard rock making Braid Hills to the south, so again there's a high ridge of rock here. And I suspect there's always been a bit of a dip in here, but the ice has really helped to carved that out. And it's very much the shape of the land in terms of ice erosion and scooping. So something we see in other parts of Edinburgh. We were talking about Loch End and Duddingston Loch and Blackford Pond, and it's a very common result of ice erosion next to these hard obstructions that the ice has had to go around. You get these deeper depressions because of the ice being diverted around an obstruction.
Stupid question. When it got to the end of Blackford Glen, what would the ice have done then?
It just keeps on going. It's heading eventually out onto the bed of the North Sea because there's so much ice that sea level was much, much lower. So the North Sea bed was empty. So the ice just kept on going out over East Lothian, doing the same thing as it does here, just gently scraping. It's not like the Highlands where the ice it's got a lot of power because it's going steeply downhill. Here it's just really spreading out from its centre and modifying the landscape. But this is a nice example of that.
Yeah. Well, I always think that when we get to what's called the Scout Bridge and beyond the Scout Bridge from this direction, it's very deep channel, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
It is amazing.
Yeah, the Scout Bridge is very much the transition.
Roxy's in the river again.
She just loves playing. And this is a really interesting transition just at the Scout Bridge, because this is where the nature of the Glen really changes. The Hermitage, very deep rocky gorge with trees in it, and the floods of today are nothing compared to the flood that created this. Because we were talking before about the ice erosion shaping the Glen and shaping the landscape very slowly. But what happens when the ice melts is that you get summertime conditions when the ice is warming up and a lot of water on the move. If you go to Iceland in the summer, you see these same thing happening. You get these lovely deep rocky gorges churning with cold meltwater, and it's blue-grey colour because it's so full of silt, very, very erosive. And so that's what this would have looked like. Around about, well, certainly in the last 20,000 years, and as the ice is melting, so it's maybe about 15,000 years ago. And maybe not for very long, because there was a lot more water being sent in this direction all the way over from the other side of the Pentlands, from what is now the Water of Leith drainage. The water was actually getting diverted from Collington and coming through here. So there would have been an absolute torrent, and that's why it's managed to the river's cut down to this level, to the base of the Glen that's been carved out by the ice, but the carving came first and then the water flow came after.
So how long after the striations we saw in Agassiz Rock, how long after that would the water have been coming down here?
Just a few thousand years, maybe even just a few hundred years.
And it was the ice melting?
The ice was melting, yeah, and a lot of ice, and the existing drainage blocked by ice or by moraine, a pile of debris, and this whole base of the channel would have been full of water. I kind of imagine there were several metres of water flooding through
high
here.
Up.
Yeah, so you could stood up on the edge there and just looked into this churning channel of grey-blue meltwater.
And how long would that have been running down?
Well, I don't know. I kind of imagine not very long, maybe just a few decades, a few centuries, I don't know. Because the ice disappears.
That sounds quite a long time.
Well, it does in human terms, but the ice, I'm a geologist.
Yeah.
A million years is a short time for a geologist. And to think about this being created in a few centuries, perhaps, is quite dramatic.
Yes, isn't it? So the water came down this channel, but then for some reason the lower bit, because it's different rock, is that right?
Yes, and because the lower channel was already there, because the ice had already carved it out. So really what the water had to do was to get over this hard rock that we see here and cut down into it. So the ice previously had flown over and down and around Blackford Hill, and then afterwards the water. Because the ice caps have come across Edinburgh many times, maybe 10 times. So this is just the effect of the last melt. Just had something cause this particular little feature to be formed, and it's such a lovely spot, so different from the rest of Edinburgh.
It's really dramatic, isn't it?
I was a student at King's Buildings just over the hill for 4 years, and I didn't know this existed.
Joking. I mean, it's just here.
It's just here. I went to the top of Blackford Hill, and one of my friends even said, we were talking about doing a conservation project. He said, we should go and do something in the Hermitage, and I didn't know it was here. I discovered it later. But isn't that the magic of Edinburgh?
Yeah.
It's got such a varied landscape. It's got all these beautiful green spaces. This is a great place for a winter walk, actually, because it tends to be quite sheltered down in the Glen here.
Yeah, we walk here a lot, and it's a popular dog walk, and you can walk all the way down through the Glen and it wiggles down, and then you can go up onto Blackford Hill and you can go up onto Braid Hill, so you can walk for miles.
And the number of people walking today, I mean, some people walking dogs, but there's also just people out for a stroll, and I think people actually just cutting through because it's a nice day and they want to go to the other side of the hill.
I'm really loving Roxy's game.
She's a happy dog.
And she's still got the ball,
yes, so that's what she does. She drops it and she wants it to fall into the water so that she can chase it. Shall we go and look at some rocks? Because this is slightly unusual rock type. It's called trachyte. And it's the rock that makes up Braid Hills, and it extends here down to the Hermitage and actually forms a layer of lava underneath Blackford Hill. But Blackford Hill is made from andesite. Andesite is a very common volcanic rock named after the Andes, and you find it all over the world. Trachyte has got added alkali metals, so it's got potassium and sodium in it, and it just gives it slightly different mineralogy. But what I love about it is the name trachyte, because it's derived from Greek, meaning rough, and it's one of these rocks which fits its name. It's called rough because when you go up to a cliff like this and you touch it, you say, oh, that's surprisingly spiky.
It is, isn't it? I wouldn't want to climb up that, actually.
Yeah.
It's
really, really jaggedy. Compared to the andesite we see in Blackford Hill, so just a tiny change in the chemistry and we get a lava flow of a different kind of rock. And they say trachyte around the world, it's got loads of cracks running through it.
Why does it have lots of cracks running through it?
Just the way it's cooled and the nature of the rock. And it's one of these nice things which when you spot it, and it's got a kind of purpley colour, it's quite distinctive. So you see it up in Braid Hills. There's a few places in the Pentlands where it crops up as well.
So where would I find it on Braid Hills, where I am most mornings?
So the crags up on the top.
Right.
And a lot of the little crags is, through the golf course, you occasionally see little rocky crags. And it's often, this has got a lot of moss and lichen on it, but it's often quite a nice deep purple colour.
So we've walked up from the Scout Bridge in Blackford Glen, and we have walked up onto the side of Blackford Hill at the foot of the incredibly steep and annoying steps that take you up towards the top. And we're in the sun, and there's a lot of gorse, which is bright yellow. It's beautiful, and the trees are coming out. And tell me about the rock we're looking at.
So we're at the end of Blackford
That one
Hill.
up there.
Yeah, very steep crags, and this is where the ice is really hit against Blackford Hill. So in front of us, we're looking out over the paddock. And it's fairly flat in that direction, Craiglorca Hill in the distance, but the ice is just trundling along here, and this is where it hits this big lump of rock, and it goes over the top of it and slides down the back. So wow. Blackford Hill is a crag and tail. Edinburgh Castle Rock is kind of more of a famous one, but this is the same shape. It's quite steep in this side, hence the steep steps, whereas it's this long, gentle tail down to the golf course and King's Buildings.
And that's occurred because the ice hits the rock and then sort of dribbles.
Yeah, goes round the sides and scoops round the sides and over the top and slides down. But what I really wanted to show you was this dry stone dike here. Well, it's been partially cemented, but this constructed wall, of course, they used local rocks. And there's this place here, and you can do another Google map pin. But these three rocks are the three rocks of this area.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got our spiky trachyte, beautiful smooth andesite, and they're in order as well. So the trachyte lava flow was first, then the andesite lava that forms Blackford Hill came after that, and then the volcanic activity stopped and we get the accumulation of sand. So this is a lovely rough sandstone, very sparkly in the sunshine, and that's the start of the accumulation of Edinburgh's sedimentary rocks.
And do we think it's an accident that those three are here in...
I like to imagine not. I like to imagine a geologist was just like, well, we need to get these in the right order. But it is these rocks that are used for the wall, and actually...
I think they're a bit random, actually, because when you look down here, you
see another sandstone block. Yeah. But these three, beautiful.
It's amazing, that's like a little geology lesson on top of the wall.
Yeah. There's a piece of geology that we probably should visit. It's down beside Blackford Pond.
Okay.
And the Natural Heritage Service have put a sign there to say what it is. And it is important in the big scheme of things.
We're now walking around the edge of Blackford Hill between the most beautiful gorse, which is seems a bit early.
I'm laughing because my mum told me something that I've since heard from other people about gorse, that kissing's in season when gorse is in flower.
Oh.
And you quite often see gorse, like this quite early on and then lingering all the way through the year. And I saw some little bit of folk history. And I just love these stories that are, I think if you ask people about gorse flowers, a lot of people would know this about kissing being in season, but I wonder if there's a deeper sort of herbal medicine at play.
Surprised there are any flowers left in that.
Yeah, absolutely. A lovely view down to the allotments. Yeah. One of the reasons that I love this time of year so much is just because the trees aren't in leaf. So you can stand there and you can see this beautiful sweep of the landscape, which is because of the ice. And it's there's so many places in Edinburgh where the ice has moulded the landscape and you get these beautiful deep valleys and curving slopes as well. It's not just a valley, it's actually a kind of interesting topography.
I was on your talk when you were up Craiglockhart Hill, and that's got this cliff edge, and that's because the ice cut past it,
yes.
Is that right?
So coming this direction, so we can see the Craiglockhart Glen, is it? The Glen between the two hills? That little deep cut, and so the ice has come over and again slid down into this scoop. Roxy's doing a very good job at showing us how steep this slope is.
Roxy's right down the bottom. I'm enjoying having a dog on the podcast. It's very nice.
Right. So you see these lovely smooth andesite faces. Yes, lava. It's one of the last lava flows in the whole sequence of volcanic eruptions that created the Pentland Hills. And then it comes to an end. This is 410 million years ago. It comes to an end and it gets buried. And then later, Arthur's Seat erupts. And we get a view of the castle now.
Here's the sign that's on the rock. In loving memory of Rex and Moss and Polly and Cleo. Four dogs to whom this hill belonged other days of their lives.
I think the reason this bit is so steep is that they actually quarried some stone off this face. Lovely view now over down to central Edinburgh and Arthur's Seat and Salisbury Crags. And we were talking about the ice coming across this landscape, and it's hard to imagine, and I suppose that's what Agassiz was getting at. We're used to the climate we've got today and this idea that there was ice here, because when you say that we think, well, maybe okay, we get some snow, but actually it was a huge ice cap, and across Edinburgh it's probably getting on for a mile thick. And it's rising, isn't it amazing? I know, isn't it amazing? Yeah, it's rising gradually up to the central highlands. So it's a huge covering of ice, and it's just slowly moving because it sort of spreads out from its high central point and just spreads, comes down the Firth of Forth. So each of these hills is a barrier to it. And it all scrapes away the debris. It leaves us with this nice clean landscape.
It's hard to imagine it. I mean, easy for you because you're a geologist, but for somebody who's standing here looking at the allotments in Morningside and the castle, and it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, but the amazing thing about the ice being here is how recent it was and how people have lived in this landscape and the repercussions of the changes that have happened since the ice departed. It's only 20,000 years when this was covered in ice and took a few thousand years to melt away, and then just a few thousand years after that people are coming here. So people have seen this change from being this rough, cold, quite hostile landscape, and then all the trees just blossoming, taking over, and the weather being warmer and just being a really pleasant place to live. And then the town expanding out.
Yeah, we're coming round to the north side and we can see Arthur's Seat now and the crags. And we're coming down the steps now and we're just above Blackford Pond, which we were talking earlier about was once not much of it left was gouged out by glaciers potentially.
Yeah, just
but
a little.
It's got artificial stuff in it now.
A little hollow sitting in the landscape. And It's been
And just the other
modified by
side of the
people.
road is the Jordan Burn.
See, I didn't know that. That's great. I'm going to have to go and follow it.
Walk the route one day, but there's not much of it that's exposed. You can see it in Astley Ainsley Hospital. There's a tiny section just off Braid Avenue beside some houses. There's even a Jordan Burn Lane, which is where the snooker club is. But I find it really interesting where all these burns go into culverts and come out again and change their names. So if you live in Portobello, you know it as the Frigate Burn.
Yes.
But if you live here, you know it as the Braid Burn.
Yeah. I should put you in touch with the man who does walking tours around the Comiston Springs, because that's a fascinating story. The springs are all still there with well houses, and then you can follow the route of the wooden pipes that took them down through Braidburn Valley Park with Blackford Hill Rock. So we're just at the end of Blackford Pond, and this is a place to see the different rocks that make up Blackford Hill and actually get a sense for the volcanic activity. But it isn't very clear. Unfortunately, we should go and have a look.
They've given us a signboard so that we can
know where to go. There's some nice steps up to the rock face. So the sign tells us about the different layers, but they're not very visible. I think the andesite is nice and clear, which is the upper part of
Is that the
Blackford
bit
Hill.
right up there, or the bit just here above us?
Everything just above head height. And it's got nice smooth surfaces and quite sharp edges, but this is andesite, and it's part of a lava flow that makes up all of Blackford Hill. And then underneath there's a little eroded section, and this is the loose material, which is volcanic ash, and it's formed a rock which is just a bit softer. But it's not very clear what layers are what.
They're sort of merging a bit, aren't they?
Yes. But the important thing is that we've got evidence of volcanic explosions. So we know from the kind of volcanoes, when you look around the world today at volcanoes like this, you get andesite, well, named from the Andes. You get trachyte in some places. There's silica rich, which means that the lava has got a high viscosity. It doesn't tend to run very easily. So this is a very different style of eruption from Arthur's Seat, where you've got lots of lava flows. It doesn't flow. You get these lava domes and you get lots of explosions. However, this is 400 million years ago. And the problem is that if there were lots of explosions and big clouds of ash and ash in the atmosphere and raining down out of the sky, it's loose material at the surface which is quite easy to wash away, whereas the lava flows are much more coherent. So that's why it's important to see this evidence. Although it's not very impressive, it does tell us this nice story that the local volcanoes were exploding as well as producing lava.
So the lava flow will have come over the trachyte, and then how did the andesite then get there?
So there's different lava flows from different places.
Right.
The sequence is the trachyte first,
Yeah.
and then getting this small layer of volcanic ash deposited on top, and then another lava flow on top to bury it
Right,
and
so that
preserve
was
it.
that.
Yeah,
The
so,
andesite is it's completely different lava flow.
Yeah, it does look, it's very, very different rock. But I think also this weakness between the two lava flows is actually what has allowed erosion to get in. So going back up towards the allotments, we've got this low valley which carries on right round to where we started, which is this where the ice has managed to find a weakness between the different rock layers. So actually this is the weakness which creates the landscape.
Well, you say it's not very impressive, but actually I'm looking at it and thinking it is quite cool, because you can see the three different rocks to the uninitiated eye.
Yes, good.
You've seen...
Good.
The reason you don't think it's very impressive is because you've probably been somewhere where you've seen something that's incredibly impressive. But for someone who's walking their dog in Blackford, this is a really interesting thing to come and see.
I think maybe we just need to paint numbers on it, say layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. So, and I think the other
signs with arrows.
Yes,
yeah.
the other thing today is the sun is just shining on it. I've been here quite a few times in greyer conditions, trying to persuade people that these are exciting rocks, and not always managed, I don't think.
I guess you have to be honest, but I think, to me, it's very distinctive.
Good. Well, that's great.
And a place I've been many times, and I think I came and looked at this once and didn't really know what I was looking at, but it's really great that you've explained it, because now I get it.
Well, it's great if we can share a photograph so that people can see what it is we're talking about.
So obviously we're looking at this little layer here, but if somebody wants to find out more about Edinburgh And it's geology. Where's the best place for them to go and look?
I think probably the Edinburgh Geological Society website is a great place to start. So there's loads of leaflets. There is a leaflet for Blackford Hill and the Hermitage, so you can download that for free as a PDF. You can order a paper copy to get sent through the post. And we've got about 25 leaflets for different sites around about Edinburgh, so that's a great place to start.
And they could also go on one of your tours.
Come along on a GeoWalk, yeah.
That would be good, wouldn't it? And so if somebody wanted to find fascinating geology, obviously we're just looking at some of it here. Where are the good places to go if they want to look at really a stunning bit of geology and learn about it?
Well, I think the combination of Blackford Hill and Arthur's Seat is a great start because they're so different. So as part of the Seven Hills of Edinburgh, and that's a nice combination. But the other part of Edinburgh's geological story that we haven't really covered is the accumulation of sediment and making sedimentary rocks, and they tend to be a bit softer and less obvious. But there's some really nice places around the coastline in particular. Been over in Fife this weekend, and places like Kinghorn to Kirkcaldy and Dicer. There's just lovely exposures of layers of sandstone, limestone, mudstone. You can see them on the beach. And the same in East Lothian. Barnes Ness, White Sands is a really famous spot. So there's plenty of places round about where the geology is just sitting waiting to be discovered.
Sounds good. There were some amazing rocks. I did some of the Fife Coast Path. I think it was near Crail. There was some sort of caves and
Cape Caves,
yeah,
lovely stuff.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I thought really interesting. Well, thank you very much, Roxy, for joining us on the podcast. Thank you very much for doing another geology tour for us because I'm really enjoying them, and that's been fascinating.
Absolute pleasure. It's so nice to get out and about in Edinburgh, isn't it? And there's so many places to explore, so it's really nice to share this one with you.
And it's really nice to come somewhere and not be cold.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, that was the sunniest podcast of the year so far. It was really nice walking around Blackford Hill in the area, looking at the geology and learning so much from Angus, who's a really good, knowledgeable person and makes the geology very understandable as well. And thank you for listening to Edinburgh Outdoors. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate us on your podcast app and leave a review. And don't forget to tell your friends, family or colleagues about it too. And of course, if you know of an outdoors space or person in or around Edinburgh that might like to be featured, you can get in touch via email, Blue Sky, Instagram or Facebook.